Hi friends, this is Gina G. Gruta and I shall be presenting the presentation of findings. So it is part of our chapter 4 in our thesis. So after we've gone through the chapters 1 to 3, it's now time for us to summarize, present, analyze, and interpret the data we have collected. So before we proceed, I would like to emphasize what Nancy Porte is saying. So she says that people are amazing at collecting data, but they are often less skilled at creating insights out of it and spreading them throughout the whole organization. Data is great, but it rarely means anything unless you've figured out what that data is saying and what you're going to do about it. So it is very, we are very skilled at gathering data, but most of us is having hard time on presenting it the way people or most of the people understand it. So it is also very critical for us to summarize, present, and give analysis on the data we have collected to give meaning to it. Once the data collection is completed, the next step is presentation and analysis of data. Analysis of such data can be categorized into two methods based on the type of data that has been gathered. It can be quantitative data analysis and qualitative data analysis. So in quantitative data analysis, we employ statistical procedures to analyze quantitative data, which can be divided into two statistical branches. It is descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. So in descriptive statistics, we summarize and describe the data, while in inferential statistics, we make inferences in relation to a wider population. So it can be also subdivided into two, which is the parametric test and non-parametric test. When conducting quantitative analysis, it can be viewed as a process that involves the following stages. So the first one is the preparation of your data, followed by summarizing and presenting your data, then describing your data using statistical methods that I have mentioned a while ago, and last is examining relationships and trends. The first step in quantitative data analysis is organizing your data. It involves entering your data into statistical software programs such as SPSS or MX Excel, so whichever you prefer. When entering your data, you will start by creating a spreadsheet or a matrix. Each column should represent a variable and each row represents a case. So we have to consider to identify what type of data we have. So it can be nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. We have also to identify number of variables because it influences the choice of analytical tool. So a statistical method can be based on the following numbers of variables. So it is univariate when it involves one variable, bivariate if we have two variables, and multivariate if we have three or more variables. So majority of the methods associated with descriptive statistics are based on univariate data or one variable. Conversely, inferential statistics are typically associated with bivariate or multivariate data. So the second step is summarizing and presenting your data. So undertaking descriptive statistics allows you to describe your data and present it in a number of ways. These include frequency tables, bar charts, pie charts, and graphs. The main advantage of summarizing the data is that it provides the reader with a simple overview of your data prior to more detailed analysis. So these are the example of descriptive statistics. So I have here a clip from the book. So it is divided into 3 columns, which the method, purpose, examples of application. So if you want to summarize your data, so you will use it's either frequency tables or you have to illustrate your data through graphs and charts. So So another thing, if you have to measure the central tendency, so we have to get the mean, median, and mode. So example of which is analyzing exam scores from a finance exam. So we have to use standard deviation when we measure dispersion. So another thing is we have to get the range and interquartile range if we have to also measure the dispersion, and index numbers when describing a change. We have to use also this cross tabulation for frequency distribution, scatter diagrams, and multiple bar charts in also for us to if we have to for frequency distribution. Shown on screen is the sample of frequency distribution table. So the first one is the number of cars among directors. So we have 5 plus 4, 9, 13, 15. 15 respondents or 15 directors. So some 5 said that they own 1 car. 4 said that they have 2. Another 4 said they have 3. And 2 said that they have 4. So as you can see, the number of cars, or the first column, arrange the number of cars in increasing order. So it is also important for us to arrange our what do you call this? Our data or case in increasing order. And on the second table, we have the frequency distribution of salaries of employees. Indicate how many number of employees have a salary of less than 10,000, and so on and so forth. So you can also observe that they have equal range among this interval. So we have 10,000. We have plus 10,000 in each row. Shown on screen is another example of graphical presentation of data. So we use the line graph. So it describes the sales of ABC company in the first quarter of 2008. So it is also important if we are using illustrative or graphical presentation of data, is the title of the graph, the axis labels, and the legend. For us, for the readers to understand what the data is or what the graph is all about. So another example is the pie chart. So pie charts are straightforward diagrams that compare a limited amount of data. So by way of illustration, let's say you are concerned with the presentation of market share figures for 7 construction companies of ABC company. So because it represents their subsidiaries or affiliates. You may begin by summarizing your data in the form of a simple table in the above. So then from that, we can now make a pie chart. So in this example, I would say that we could use another color for us not to get confused on the colors of the portion which represent 2. However, in the illustration, it is clear, it has a label. For example, in Z build, which is 7%, So it has similar color with others 2%, yet we have to we indicate the label so that it cannot be confusing for the readers. So another example is shown on screen is the bar charts and histogram. So in bar charts, so we have to illustrate the number of employees in advertising agency. So employees are in different department of HR, finance, and marketing. So in Hall Media, in BC Global, JLC, P Media agencies, so we have describe, or we have summarize or illustrate the number of employees under HR, finance, and marketing department, which is labeled as follows. And another example is the histogram. Well, a histogram is a type of bar chart that shows the frequency distribution of a set of data. It provides a clear indication of the nature of your distribution, in particular, whether or not you have a normal or skewed distribution. So when describing your data, we have also to take into consideration the following. If you are measuring central tendency, as I've mentioned on the example of descriptive statistics on the previous slides, we have to use the we have to get the mean, median, and mode. And when we are measuring the dispersion, we have to get the standard deviation range and interquartile range. With describing change, we have to get the index number, weighted index number, cross tabulation, and scatter diagrams. So I believe that these topics are already discussed in the previous videos. So especially under statistics presentation. So when examining relationship, so this is the last step of quantitative data analysis. So we have to use inferential statistics. So we used to draw inferences about a population from a given sample. So as I said, inferential statistics can be subdivided into parametric and non-parametric tests. So parametric statistical procedures rely on assumption about the shape. So we assume a normal distribution about the shape of distribution in the underlying population and about the form of parameters. So we use the means and standard deviation. So while on the non-parametric statistical procedures rely on no or few assumptions about the shape of or parameters of population distribution from which the sample was drawn. So as also discussed in the previous discussion, we cannot have both statistical procedures. We cannot use both parametric and non-parametric. So we have only to choose one. It's either parametric or non-parametric statistical procedures. Shown on screen is the examples of inferential statistics. So when we get to estimate, we use the hypothesis testing and confidence intervals. So when we have to forecast, we use time series analysis. When measuring association, we can use Pearson's product movement correlation coefficient or Spearman's rank correlation coefficient. And when we measure the difference, we use chi-square or chi-square. Also the student's t-test. So in assessing the strength of the relationship between variables, we can use simple regression or multiple regression. So examples of application is as written or as illustration, as indicated. So, in hypothesis testing, it involves making a statement about some aspect of the population, then generating a sample to see if the hypothesis can or cannot be rejected. So, to test the hypothesis, you need to formulate a null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. So, null hypothesis assumes that there is no change, no difference, or no correlation in the value being tested. So the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true is referred to as significance level. So example is if P is less than 0.05, so we get to reject the null hypothesis. So, in confidence interval, it uses a range of values that is likely to comprise an unknown population parameter. So, for deeper understanding about these things, so under inferential statistics, you may refer also to other videos or other report. So, in qualitative data analysis, can involve a mix of data sources including observation, spoken word, written text, and visual data. It often deals with a huge amount of raw data, thus it can be both time-consuming and difficult when it comes to interpreting findings. So these are the steps in qualitative data analysis. So the first one is transcribing your data, then reading and generating categories, themes, and patterns, interpreting your findings, and last is writing the report. So in transcribing your data from personal interviews, make sure that you do not alter respondents' answer. When transcribing, you must transcribe the verbatim answers from your respondents. Once you have fully transcribed your data, you may use also software packages such as NVivo and Cactus. I don't know the pronunciation if it is right. So you are ready to begin to organize your data. Analytical considerations when analyzing data from observations can be summarized as follows. So chronology, you should tell the story from beginning to end. The key elements, you have to present data by critical incidents or major events. You have also take into consideration the various settings. So you describe various places, sites, settings, or location. The people, or if individuals or groups are the primary unit of analysis, then case studies of people of groups may be the focus for the case studies. So the processes also, the data may be organized to describe important processes, and the issues, so the observations may be pulled together to illuminate key issues. So the second step is reading and generating categories, themes, and patterns. So reading through your transcripts, looking over your notes, and watching video recordings to become familiar with and identifying your data. Reading and rereading will help you identify patterns and themes in your data. The next step is to adopt a process of coding. So coding allows you to break down raw data into something more manageable. So we have two approaches in coding the data, which is the emergent coding or priori coding. So in emergent coding, so it is inductive or the bottom-up approach. So categories will develop through examining your data. While on the other, it uses the deductive approach or the top-down approach. Categories are determined prior to your data analysis. So example, these are the example of coded extract from an interview transcript. So as you can see, it is a verbatim transcript. It is the coded extract from a verbatim transcript. So meaning to say, you have to transcribe what exactly your interviewee said. So another thing is the coding. So in this example, under coding frame, so this is the coding frame when you when you assign codes. So from example, so the first example is what the interviewee said. So you have to get the theme or the trust, or it meaning to say that it refers to trust. So you have coded it as T1. So the next one, or the number 2, the theme is about commitment. So you have coded it as C1, and so on and so forth, for us to make it easier or to analyze or to break down the raw data. So in interpreting your findings, in this process, your intention is to develop a more meaningful understanding of your findings. A major part of the interpretation of data is looking connections between categories and have identified in the transcript. So there are many approaches to qualitative data analysis. So the grounded theory, or the systematic generating of theory from data that itself is systematically obtained from social research. So it is the inductive approach. And the narrative analysis is the study of stories of a chronological series of events. The discourse analysis, which examines both spoken and written language. The visual analysis involves analyzing images that may come from secondary or primary findings. So the last step is the writing the report. So qualitative findings may entail content analysis or narrative analysis. Content analysis is a method of quantifying qualitative data. Quotations from participants is a common method of presenting data. The inclusion of verbatim quotes used to provide insights and illustrate pattern. So when presenting quotation, make sure that it is done thematically and in the context of your study. So the final part of my report is the guidelines in writing the summary of findings. So the summary of findings, we have to collate, tabulate, and interpret the data. So the first one is present the data gathered in a tabular form. So tables should contain columns or headings that will summarize and clearly present what you want to emphasize. So presentation of tables should be parallel with the statement of the problem. Tables should be concise, validated, summarized, and detailed. Next one is analysis, means you convert the tabular data into textual form. It should be unbiased presentation of data in textual form or reflection of data that have been presented in tabular form. The next one is do not interpret all the data in the table in textual form. Get only the data with highest or lowest value, or first to 3 values. So finally, synthesize the information with citations that will support what you have discovered to strengthen your claim. So the citations are also important in chapter 4. So for us to support what we have discovered from the data we have collected. So for future readings, you may refer to the following references. Okay, that ends my presentation. I hope you learned something. Thank you.